Hello, everyone. It's Joe with Secular Morgan CPA. I'm reaching out to you because it's November 1st and we have the end of the year coming up very soon. And whether or not your fiscal year end is not 12/31, everybody still needs to file W-9s for their independent contractors that they used over the calendar year, no matter if you're a 6/31 year end or anything like that. So, what I want to do is make sure you're prepared, that you know exactly what to expect. I'm going to go over a lot of generalities. Obviously, there's a bunch to cover that we could, but I want to make sure that you're just looking out for this and starting to get prepared, because we will get into more detail with you one-on-one come January. Now, knowing what to do ahead of time is very important, including getting their information in the first place. That every time that you use a vendor, we want you to have a Form W-9. It's actually required of you by the IRS to be able to prove the type of people that you used. And that's provided at Form W-9, which a brand new one just came out in October, by the way. So get the new one and start using that going forward. But every single one of them is going to need their name, which is their complete name, whether it's an individual, which needs to be, can't be Bob if it's Robert, as far as the IRS is concerned. But it also includes if the business itself is a DBA, that perhaps the business is under the person's name, but they actually do a DBA. Both of those need to be on there. But what's most important, of course, is how they are classified, their tax classification, whether or not they're an individual or an S Corp or an LLC, and their valid address that they can be reached, and their Social Security number or EIN, their tax ID number, and it needs to be signed. You'll keep that on record pretty much indefinitely. But the most important thing for you to do is know that you need to have this so you can prove who they are, because if the IRS cannot get the income that you provide them, if they can't get the taxes because they can't find out who they are, they'll come to you for that tax. And that's 24% that you really don't want to pay. Now, what you need to know about who needs a 1099. Essentially, and these are generalities, for you guys, we're going to talk to you one-on-one, but in general, if you're paying for their time and expertise, those are the type of people that you are providing a 1099 for. Whether or not it is a caterer or a website designer or a speaker or anything along those lines, you are paying for their time and expertise. And that includes something as simple as giving people money to stuff envelopes or fold things for you. If you're giving them money, it's their time. If you use an attorney and accountant, almost all of our cost is time and expertise. So they will require a 1099. The things that are not along those lines of time and expertise, but is actually pretty common for most people, is if they actually pay rental of an office space. And that doesn't include storage units or doesn't include parking. It is what the IRS wants to know: what did you pay in rent for office space? It also comes into play on prizes and awards, especially here at the end of the year. A few of you are about to have some events. And if you do give out prizes and awards, those people also are required to have a 1099. Now, what you'll always need for the 1099 are people that get paid or get awards along those lines of $600 or more in the calendar year. If it's under $600, you're not required to report them. And of course, unless they are royalties and dividends of $10 or more. But very few of you deal with that. Now, the ones that never need to worry about a 1099 filing is when you actually pay that person or entity with a credit card, an Amex or something that draws directly off your checking account. It is going to be that credit card provider that is going to collate and issue the 1099s on your behalf. You don't have to worry about it. But there's also other things that come into play that are the exceptions of why you wouldn't file a 1099. That includes, I mentioned about paying rent for office space, but if you're paying that rent to a real estate agent, the agent takes care of that on your own. You don't need to get them a 1099. The same falls under the corporations. They have their own reporting procedures that the IRS is happy with. Now, some of those people, and this kind of goes back to W-9, making sure that's accurate, that the LLCs sometimes can be corporations and sometimes they're not. So it's important that you know which ones are which. The only exception to all this is if you pay an attorney $600 more in the calendar year, they will always get a 1099 no matter what their corporate status. Utility companies, you don't have to worry about them. government agencies. That sounds kind of weird, but some school organizations, the PTOs and various people like that, they actually pay rent to the state, either through the school or through an office space that's owned by the government. Those guys don't get 1099s. And of course, you're not issuing a 1099 for the amounts that are for reimbursement of material and that sort of thing. Like in this example that you see there, Joey Bag of Donuts, he gave a speech and he was paid $500 for that portion. But he's also given money to stay at the hotel and to pay for gas, that sort of thing. Because the $500 is under the $600 limit, even though the rest of it put him over the $600 limit, only the $500 counts for the 1099. And the other ones that don't get a 1099 are the foreign contractors of entities and individuals that do work outside. They're not going to get a 1099. Now, just real briefly, I'm going to finish this up with the one most common thing is the W-2G. Again, here towards the end of the year with all you people giving events, sometimes you'll give out prizes, both in cash, and sometimes people will put in, the auction things off, raffle tickets, stuff like that. The value of it, whether it's a trip or it's actual cash, as long as it's $600 or more and $300 times 300 times the original wager, then it qualifies for what is called a W-2G instead of the 1099. Now, keep in mind, someone gives you $2 to get the opportunity to win $600, that qualifies because it's the 300 times. But if they gave you $20 to win $600, that is not 300 times or more, so that wouldn't require a W-2G. Now, all that comes into play no matter what they waged, as long as if it goes over $5,000, and there's actually a different form for that. You'll talk to us before we go forward. And in all cases, when you are filling out things for the W-9, the W-2G, you will also need a W-9 from them as well. There's other things that will come into play. We're going to address them, but we want you to know now so that you can get prepared, start looking at your books, start looking at those people that maybe you don't have the complete information for, like their address or their tax ID. That now's the time to contact them instead of that very short window of the month of January when you need that information, but you haven't talked to them since last February. So take a look at your books now, look for those vendors, and we'll get back to you as the end of year gets closer. Thanks for everything. Talk to you soon.